Hello and welcome to this week's lecture. This week we're going to talk about picture books, easy readers, and transitional books. We're going to start talking about picture books. Within picture books, the stories and the text and the image work together to tell the story. It's a foundation. Reading picture books to children is a foundation of literacy. Being read aloud to allows them to start to understand reading and get used to turning the pages and understanding story and sequence. But also the best picture books intertwine text and pictures if they have text and pictures. There's some really excellent picture books that are wordless, but when they have text, the pictures can reinforce the text, what's going on in the story, extend or develop the plot, establish setting and mood, or even provide interesting asides. And if you think about The Mitten, the story of The Mitten, where each animal comes in and gets into the mitten until it has no more space. Bigger and bigger animals get into the mitten. In Jan Brett's illustration of it, you can see on each page around the border, you can see the next animal that's going to come into the picture. So it can provide that kind of aside or other kinds of asides. So the best picture books with text, they work together and they both enhance each other. So what I'd like to do to start off with is to show you some different kinds of picture books. I'm going to categorize them just for convenience of talking about types of picture books. Certainly there are overlaps. Everything we're going to talk about this semester in terms of genres or categorization, there's always overlaps and always things that can be put in more than one category. But just for convenience sake, I'm going to show you some different types of picture books. And so classic picture book is an ABC book for kids. This one is called Z for Moose, and it's a cute book. Moose can't wait to get to his page, and so he's always butting in. You can see here D is for Moose, and when it gets to Moose, they do M is for Mouse. So he gets mad, and for the rest of the book, he's trying to take over the pages. So there's a ton of different ABC books, can be used to learn alphabets. Others are created as a way of organizing a topic. Catherine Kroll does M for music, and it's an A to Z of musical terms rather than really kind of an ABC book for younger kids. So there's a lot of different ways that ABC books have been used. I'm not always sure that they help kids learn their alphabet, but they can be a fun way of reinforcing the idea that this sound can stand for this word or the beginning of this word. There's counting books. I love Anthony Brown's books. This is One Gorilla. I just think these images are gorgeous. This is not a great picture, but I love the individual characterization he gives each. Even though they're the same looking animal, each is a distinct personality. And I think this is the book that says at the end that primates are all one family, and the last page shows people of every color. There's also great math books that are picture books like John Sheska's and Lane Smith's Math Curse, as well as picture books that include 0 and count past 10. This one I believe only goes to 10. Concept books introduce a single concept like opposites, shapes, colors. ABCs and counting books can also be considered concept books, but I'm kind of using this in a little broader term in terms of a concept that's a little more nebulous. And concept books also are an in-depth concept book is actually an informational book or nonfiction, but there's a lot of really good picture books that are informational books like this. I love this one, A Little Book of Sloth. And this one is really Welcome Home Bear, a book of animal habitats. Very few words on each page, but the bear visits his friends in different habitats trying to find a good place to live. So it can introduce habitats to the youngest children. And I just happen to be in love with this author and his illustrations. And this one is also could be considered a concept book, a book of sleep, and just showing different animals asleep. And I just think his art is beautiful. You can also get informational books that are still picture books that are a little bit older, like this Librarian of Basra, which tells the true story of a librarian in Iraq who wants to save her library. So in the middle of the night, I'm sorry this picture's so fuzzy, but she starts placing her books around, taking them out of the library and hiding them in different houses in her town of Basra, so that if something happens to the library, they don't all get destroyed. Now, while there's very few words in this, and it's very much a picture book, some of the images can be a little intense, as the one on the left is, so you have to beware of the audience that you share this book with, and know that a picture book can also be for older students, even if it's only got a few words. And it's good to keep in mind that something like this, with its relatively simple text, could be used with middle schoolers to introduce the topic of middle schoolers, even high schoolers, just to introduce the topic of the war in Iraq and what might have happened and how it impacted individuals' lives. So another type of picture book is called a participation book. So some involvement that goes beyond reading. It can be finding hidden objects, like in this Lookalikes book. These books, all of the items in this picture are actually, excuse me, other real life items. Like there's a pencil there. You can see a watch here. I think these are some kind of canister. So you can see that they're all different. This looks like a thread holder. So there's a lot to look at in these books. Another kind of interactive or participation book would be Pat the Bunny, which is the classic storybook where it has the fuzzy part coming through, and you pat the bunny on the fuzzy part. I think there's a rough part where you're feeling stone or something else. So it didn't come across very well here, but there's also Lift the Flat books, I Spy, Where's Waldo? These are all kinds of participation books. And as I mentioned, there's wordless books. This one was a Caldecott Medal winner. Gorgeous book with, I think, the only words in this book are the sounds that animals make, woohoo and screech. But it tells a story, just an amazing story without the words. And I just think that art in here is just gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. And this is by Jerry Pinkney, who's won a few awards. Another one who does a lot of wordless picture books is David Weisner. And this one's Flotsam, and I think they're just amazing. And really, this is also a Caldecott Medal, a Caldecott winner. And these are great for prompts that you can use for, they're great for reading, but they're also great for prompts to get students writing. So the story behind Flotsam is a little boy finds an underwater camera and develops a film, and these are the pictures. The pictures in the book are what he finds on the film, and they're just amazingly fantastical images. So let me see if I can go to the link. And just beautiful, beautiful images. And you can see it even tells the story of him finding the camera without words. I mean, he's exploring along the shore, and I don't know if we're going to see it there. There's the camera. He develops it, and you can see, you can't see the pictures in the meantime, but you can see this is the inspiration, the author when he was 5. So I could really see having students make up stories to go along with this picture book would be fabulous. Predictable books. If you, oops, sorry. For some reason it doesn't want to go away. Predictable books are those books that, also called pattern books, where things happen over and over again. So if you give a moose a muffin is repeated often, it kind of builds. If you give a moose a muffin, he'll want jam. If you give him jam, he'll want something else, etc., etc. I think the first in the series was if you give a mouse a cookie, but I like the moose book. Also, some classic, The Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly is also a classic pattern book where it's useful for developing, kids can predict what's going to happen, so it helps them develop literacy. And picture storybooks tend to be more with a story embedded in them. And all of these could be considered picture storybooks, but one of my favorites is this Tacky the Penguin. And it's a great book to use with bullying and talking about differences, because Tacky is a penguin who lives with his friends. And they're goodly, lovely, perfect, and I forget which. And of course, Tacky is just a guy of his own and does his own thing. And he counts the way he wants to, but in the end, as you can imagine, Tacky saves the day. And just absolutely one of my favorite books. Of course, I have a lot of absolutely my favorite books when it comes to picture books, but this one's a great one. Like I said, it's a really good one for bullying because it really shows how being different and not going along with the crowd can be a good thing. This one is a good book to use with character education, and I just have to share it because it's so gorgeous. Kadir Nelson does fabulous illustrations, and this one, If You Plant a Seed, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Little Red Hen, but if you plant a seed and you don't share, it's planting a seed and sharing. And when you share and share the work and share kindness, then things grow out of it. And I don't know, there's one image that I just love. If you plant a carrot seed, a carrot will grow. Cabbage seed, cabbage. What if you plant a seed of kindness or selfishness? So just the images are just priceless. And there's one image of, it's not in here, a bunch of birds facing across a 2-page spread looking at the camera that just knocks my socks off. It's gorgeous. Picture books are just endlessly amazing and fun. Engineered books are also really interesting. Robert Sabuda is a big one on these books where when you open them, things pop out. They're kind of hard to keep in the library because they don't stand up to a lot of use, but they could be really nice showpieces, probably used in limited amounts, and just to kind of talk about, certainly could be an art project with older children. There's different instructions for how to do some of these pop-up type of things, and it can be very much an inspiration for art or just an enjoyable book to share with kids who can be gentle. They're hard to really have circulate because they don't stand up to a lot of wear and tear. Illustrated books are, well, I've had you read a book, it can be called illustrated books, illustrated fiction, where there's a lot more text in the book. These are the books I used to get out with my get out of the library, and because they're always under picture books, and you're trying to read a picture book to your kid and you're tired and want the picture book to be done, and this has just a whole lot of text to read, but they can be really useful for introducing a subject. So, for example, this is a really good Pink and Say by Patricia Polacco, and she does amazing, amazing books. One of my favorite of hers is Just Plain Fancy, about a couple of Amish sisters who find an egg, and the egg hatches into a pheasant, and they're afraid that the pheasant's going to get in trouble and be shunned for being fancy, but because that's the pheasant's nature to be that way, of course they're not going to shun the pheasant. So Pink and Say is about the Civil War, and about I think it's a story that came down in Polacco's family, and two young men are on the battlefield, one black and one white, and the black soldier saves the white one, and there we go, and takes him home. They fix him up. They both wind up going to one of the prisoner of war camps, and I think the black one is killed, and the white boy, who I think is Pincus, winds up going home and becomes the ancestor of Patricia Polacco. But it's a really intense story. And again, here is a picture book that is not intended to use with the same level of, you wouldn't use it to a kid who would be okay with Tacky the Penguin. You wouldn't necessarily read Pink and Say to that age of a child. So there's a big range in what ages picture books you could read picture books, how you would use picture books. So they're just not monolithic and only for kindergartners. There's a lot of different ways to use picture books. All right, let me get back. I apologize, I have a cold, so I'm drinking in the middle. So now let's go to early readers or easy readers. They've been called both. And in the early 30s to 60s or 70s, if you were around, I remember these books. Dick and Jane was the easy reader and were pretty much boring as heck. For some reason, they decided to reissue them in 2003. So in response to Dick and Jane readers, which were not tremendously interesting, you got books in 1957 like The Cat in the Hat by Dr. Seuss, which used 236 different words, but I think only maybe this isn't a lot of one-syllable words, a lot of easy words, a lot of sight words, and managed to make a much more interesting book than Dick and Jane. And he went on to do Green Eggs and Ham. Supposedly he was challenged by his editor to write the book using only 50 distinct words. 49 were single syllable, and anywhere is the single multisyllabic word. So easy readers got to be a lot more interesting in the 60s and onwards. This is a more recent one that I've kind of organized these now in order of difficulty. There's different levels of easy readers, from very simple like Elephant and Piggy, which are great simple books for the earliest reader, with just a few words on each page and a lot. Here is where, like a picture book, the images can tell a lot of the story. So we're already into the story here without a word being said, and here, a single word on this page. Simple words, not a whole lot to read here, but it gets kids, the earliest readers can begin reading these books like Elephant and Piggy. Mo Willems does Elephant and Piggy. He also does Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus and Knuffle Bunny. It's got some great books. And then books continue to, you'll see that there's several levels of books, and each publisher tends to assign different numbers to the levels of books, which can be really drive you crazy. This is Fly Guy, and Fly Guy has fiction, like on the left, Super Fly Guy, and then also a new series where they're using the character from the fiction book in order to present nonfiction material. And I can't keep this on this page, doesn't want to be here. So you can see just very simplistically from looking at the text in this, if we can get to the text. And these were super popular for a long time. We see there's a few more words on each text, but there's still a lot of white space, and the words are pretty big. And the words are simple words. They tend to be a little more than one syllable words, although there are mixed in here some longer words that they could learn. Lunchtime, lunchroom. So that's sort of a next level. Some people might argue that it's a level up because of the complexity of some of the words, but I kind of see it as sort of that next level. This one is interesting because these are done like graphic novels. So there's not a whole lot of words in this one either, but the setup is in panels like you would see in a cartoon. But you can see the words are a little smaller, and there's a few more words per page, but it's not a lot of words per page, and there's a lot of short words. And so this is sort of an in-between reader. And you kind of have to go by, and one of the articles I've given you to read this week will talk a little bit more about where kids are in different reading levels. But you also have to look at their interest levels, which the article also talks about, and a kid that is really interested, perhaps the format, perhaps the pictures, perhaps the content or the subject, excuse me, my cold's taking over, will work a little harder to read a book that they're really interested in. Then we get to I like this book because also we have characters who are diverse. This is by Grace Lin, Ling and Ting, about twin sisters, but we have a little bit more story here. So you can see that the lines are a little closer together, the text is a little smaller, there's still some short words, but you're getting a little more text on each page. Still a lot of pictures, but more text on each page. And depending on the publisher, this could be labeled level 1, 2, 3. You can't go by the publisher. Mr. Putter and, oh gosh, I'm sorry. This mouse is really sensitive. Mr. Putter and Tabby Walk the Dog by Cynthia Rylant. Cynthia Rylant does a ton of really fun, a lot of really fun, easy readers. And what's interesting about this one is that, besides having great dogs in it, is there's no children in this one, which usually it's either animals or children or animals, anthropomorphic animals that you watch. This is Mr. Putter is an older gentleman, and they live next door to Mrs. Teaberry. So Mr. Putter and his Tabby, cat Tabby, live one side. Mrs. Teaberry, who's older, and her dog Zeke live on the other, and it tells the story of their relationship and different things that they do for each other. And you can see here again a few more words on some of the pages. The pictures still take up a lot, but the words are smaller. So this is something that you wouldn't give to a very, very, to somebody who's ready for Elephant and Piggy, probably isn't ready for Mr. Putter and Tabby, but will be soon, because students tend to move through these books very quickly. Henry and Mudge is another series that she did. As a matter of fact, the Garden State Book Awards, because she would win at one point she was so popular, she would win the Easy Reader Award every time. They developed a fiction category so that they could get somebody else to win, because she had so many that if Henry and Munch didn't win, then Mr. Putter and Tabby won, or I think she was Poppleton, and there was another one. She had a set of detectives. So they actually developed a new category that was series, so they could give some of the one-offs a little shot. What's happened, interestingly, is there's fewer of these series easy readers that are really popular right now, and there's more fiction series that are popular. So we've changed categories in the Garden State Book Awards. Little Bear is a classic. You can see, and I can read. And actually, Little Bear, this really shows there's a particular shape that I always associate with easy readers, and some of the newer easy readers don't go with this shape, but it's this rectangular, smaller shape that kind of looks like a little bit bigger paperback in dimensions, but it's instantly recognizable as an easy reader. So Little Bear was an early easy reader. Pictures are by Maurice Sendak. I didn't even go into where the wild things are and all the wonderful picture books there are. A lot of picture books. But this one starts getting into chapters. So there's 4 distinct episodes in this one. And it's getting closer to what you might consider a chapter book. But there's still not a ton of text on each page. And this one, as opposed to actually even the one we saw before, there's a lot of white space in between the text lines that make it a little easier for the reader who has, a younger reader has more trouble picking out distinct text and smaller text, so this makes it easier. A lot of single syllable words. If you look at this, you can see classic Maurice Sendak. That doesn't look like something from Where the Wild Things Are. I don't know what does. So, classic. Mercy Watson, here you're getting again to higher level easy readers. And you can again see there's more text on the page, smaller writing, more multisyllabic words, so that it's introducing them to some new words, and probably chapters. I'm pretty sure there's chapters in this one. And this is Kate DiCamilla, who's wonderful. And again, Mercy Watson's kind of on the edge where we get to now transitional books, which are chapter books, but easy chapter books. And this is when your reader is starting to get a little more comfortable with reading, ready to read a little more text, and have a little less illustration on each page. And so you see there's still some illustration, but there's a lot more words on each page, and it begins to look like a regular chapter book. But there's still not long chapters, and I'm trying to see if they have the contents page on this. No. So these are what the transitional books will start to look like. And Kate DiCamilla or Leroy Ninker. This is Mercy Watson's also a Deckawoo Drive book, so this one can go either way. And there's a lot of similarity. You could go from these to things like Time Warp Trio. Magic Treehouse is a little bit more advanced, and then you begin to go into really chapter books. But you have to find basically the book that appeals to the reader. So this cover might just speak to somebody who might not be quite ready for this level, but again is willing to work a little harder to read this, or is so excited about it. If they're at Elephant and Piggy level, they're not going to be reading something like Little Bear, but they can certainly work up to Little Bear and continue to read those books. So it's really hard when you have these publishers. Some do 1, 2, 3, 4, some do 1, 2, 3. They use different criteria. When I was in the library, one of the few labeling things that I would do was for easy readers. And I basically said there's just a couple of words on each page, a lot of white space. This is a 1. We're getting a few more words, a little less white space, and a little more complicated words. That's a level 2. Then we're getting to something like Little Bear, or even more like Mercy Watson, and that would be a level 3. So, you kind of are going to have to, there's much better ways to do that, much more sophisticated ways to do that. But for me, it was just a matter of, trying to give, especially parents, when I was in the library, these are all, we sorted and kept all of our easy readers together, but you kind of would have to keep pulling out to find something that would work for your child. And so this was kind of an easy way to do it. If you're a reading specialist, which I know some of you are, there's much more sophisticated ways of going about this and sophisticated ways of analyzing it. But I think that sometimes what's easy works, especially when it comes to what kids are reading to enjoy themselves. And that is it for today. Thank you for listening to me with my cold, and I will see you on the discussion board.